This is the Storyworks Roundtable, where we have conversations about craft. Because becoming a successful author begins with writing a great story. Hey guys, the Structure of Story is now open. This is a Storyworks Fiction nuts and bolts course, and it's all about structure. Because often structure isn't taught. People assume it's just a natural byproduct of writing. Like, if you write a story, you'll intuitively know how long to make your scenes, where to place chapter breaks, and how to maximize the effects of dramatic or comedic action. But that really isn't true. Yes, literature is an art form, but like all other art forms, it springs from a definite working knowledge of craft. By learning the mechanics of story structure, you'll be able to identify the key elements of your story, shape them to increase your story's desired effect on your readers, and turn craft concepts into tools that you have at your disposal whenever you sit down to write. You can find out more about the structure of story and preview 2 of the modules, including 3.2, which is all about chapters, at storyworksfiction.com. This course is open, it's live, it's ready to enroll. Head over to storyworksfiction.com, get the preview, and hopefully I'll see you in the classroom. All right, enjoy this week's show. Hello and welcome to this week's Storyworks Roundtable. We're thrilled to have Micah Joel back. If you haven't already heard it, listen to the companion episode with Micah where we discuss lit RPG or game fiction. On tonight's episode, we're going in a little bit of a different direction. We're craft adjacent here, talking about the writing life and how people can keep writing when you've got an issue like anxiety plaguing you, anxiety or depression, or maybe just overwhelm and stress. So welcome back, Micah. We're glad to have you here.
Good to be here.
Yeah, and I'm just going to throw that out to the round table. Who wants to start us off with any thoughts on keeping writing while dealing with life stuff?
I do remember Chris Fox saying to us once, Alida, that when I was specifically talking about losing my writing mojo, and he said, "Yep, stress will kill creativity every time." And it's just such a succinct statement that I get. It's so right.
Yeah,
it's really hard to rise above that. If you've got other things eating at you.
Yeah, that's true, and I think we all can relate to this issue, whether we've dealt with clinical depression or diagnosed anxiety or, just medications or any kind of even a physical health issue that drains your energy. We all have stress. We all have, periods of overwhelm and anxiety. So, it's definitely a creativity killer.
Yeah, I would say I haven't met a writer yet who has no signs whatsoever of anxiety or depression or ADD or imposter syndrome.
Okay, so what are those signs? Let's just cover this so everybody's on the same page. What are some of the signs we can recognize in ourselves or have encountered talking to other writers?
All right, I actually, fittingly enough, wrote about this.
Oh, good.
All right, so let me just read a paragraph here of how I describe brain fog.
Okay.
All right, so I wrote, the diffuse awareness of a dark cloud caressing your mind, that frustrating sensation of trying to remember a name. It's right there on the tip of your tongue, but the harder you push to access it, the farther away it seems. Brain fog is that sensation, except slathered across your entire day. It's a scattered, fleeting grasp of a complex thought, a muzzy-headed sensation as if you've just awoken from anesthesia at the dentist's office, that feeling when you sit down to finish writing an email, but you can't pick up where you left off because your brain refuses to load the software. The context of what you were trying to say. 404, thought not found.
Yeah.
So that's something that was very familiar to me. Yeah, the reason I put together a book on anxiety was primarily to. So I'm not a doctor. I'm not a therapist. The number one recommendation I have for folks is if you're experiencing anxiety or depression or ADD, say too many T's, ADD, if it's at the level where it's interfering with your life, go see a doctor. That's the most important thing you can do. There are therapies and medications and different things available now that weren't even just a few years ago. So if it's affecting your life, put down the book, go see your doctor, get your annual physical, get things checked out, and make sure there's no underlying conditions that are affecting you. That's if there's one thing you remember from this podcast, that should be
it. Seek help.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, how about experiences with drained creativity from any of these issues and what you did to get over it?
Yeah. So that's, I tend to internalize all my stress. Mm-hmm. Right? I just take it all in, and it just kind of eats me up from the inside. So yeah, I've had entire weekends that I've set aside. Hey, I'm going to write. I have all weekend to get words down, and at the end of the weekend, I got nothing. Right, which makes me feel bad about that. Mm-hmm. Which makes it kind of snowballs.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah.
Into a bad place. Yeah. So what I've put together is, what I've figured out is, besides the medical intervention, which actually has helped me a lot. I've put together some principles on hard-won ways to get over that. Right. So one of them is, don't go alone. Find someone to go on your journey with you, whether that's a spouse or a friend or someone. Right. And just the basics of physically caring for yourself. Make sure you get enough sleep. Right. I recommend people take a sleep vacation. Set aside a week. And for that whole week, give yourselves a full extra hour of sleep every day. Do whatever it takes to clear out your schedule and see how you feel, right? Do journaling, write about how you're feeling in the day, different times of the day, before and after, and see what extra sleep does for you. Right? Make sure you're sweating, right? Make sure you get enough exercise to actually build up a sweat and keep moving. And a few other things. That thing that gets me is that inner heckler, right? And I know a lot of people.
Yeah.
That little voice who's saying, you're no good, right? Or just wait. Part of that's imposter syndrome. Part of that is just negativity. So you see so much negativity online these days. You have to really make an effort to push the negativity out of your life, right? If you have, take a news vacation maybe.
Yeah, I think it's also not just news as well. It's the rise of author groups on Facebook has been fantastic, an absolutely extraordinary resource, and it's easy to get lost in some of the endless debates that go on. And very occasionally, a big player will come in and just slap everybody down again and say, look, just get on with it. We all write in different ways, and we're here to support each other, as opposed to debate what is the best way to write a book or the best way to market something, or why this does work and why this doesn't work. And as Micah says, you can get overwhelmed by that and take it in. And for me, it's trying to get rid of the busy thoughts in my head that interfere with creativity. And that is the thing I find the hardest to find the space for. And I agree with the sleep thing. I had a really bad breakdown in 97, bad enough to go on medication for 3 weeks. And the doctor was fantastic. She said, basically, I don't normally like prescribing pharmaceutical-based medicine. She was also a homeopath and natural-based doctor. She said, but you're going to need it for 3 weeks, because the first thing you're going to need is sleep. She said, your lack of sleep is your biggest enemy, and the next thing you need to do is start moving. So totally what Mike has just said. I think those two big things think about depression, the word itself means, everything is pushed down.
Right.
That means that, your mental energy is pushed down. Your physical energy is usually pushed down. So anything that we can do to try and get that back up again. But that's tough. I think, being a writer, if you're sat in one spot and you're racking your brain, and a lot of writers are really prolific readers. And I know one of the things that's really an issue for me is when I'm reading a fantastic book and it just sends me into a spin. I go, oh, I so hate what I'm working on at the moment because this is so brilliant, and the little voice, you can never write anything like that. Well, of course I can't. I'm not that writer, but it's really hard to escape. Anyway, that's my rant.
Yes.
No, this is good. So, okay. So the first thing to think about is whether you need medical attention, but then sleep and exercise, avoiding imposter syndrome. So that might mean taking a break from those wonderful Facebook support groups where, if you aren't in the right frame of mind, they can be a downer instead of an upper when their whole purpose is to support us. What else helps us get our creativity back?
Baby steps, I reckon.
Baby steps. Yeah, definitely. I know when I've not been writing for a while because life is crazy or I've been, editing or publishing or whatever, I often sit down to write and feel like what I'm writing is just garbage. And if I look at it too critically, I feel bad about it. So I have to give myself permission to just take the baby steps, write the garbage, knowing that the good stuff is coming. It's sort of like a funnel, and I've got to push the garbage out through the funnel before the good stuff starts to flow again.
Yeah.
So I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I've experienced this on the same level as some people. But for me, a lot of times encouragement and feedback loops help. Is that something that is beneficial? Or have you guys experienced it as beneficial, or is that something that can just spiral you down even faster? So like having the ability to let somebody like an editor or, a close family friend or something like that is going to encourage you. Does that help or does that hinder? Or does that cause more anxiety?
It's a great question.
About sharing it?
I think it depends on how far down the hole you are.
It depends on the person too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can imagine if it's somebody who just says, it's good, I like it, you won't believe them, And if it's somebody who's harsh, that's going to be detrimental. So you really need somebody who can be supportive, but to back that up with, I like it because this is good, because I see these things in this text. And who isn't going to just sugarcoat everything. So maybe if you've got a really great writer friend or reader friend who you can say, I need encouragement right now. I just want encouragement, but I need to know. I don't need BS. I need something, substantial, right?
Maybe more like how you do the writing coaching thing, right? More like a coach backing you up and saying, this is where we're going, and this is raw, but at the same time not fluff.
Right. Exactly.
And the setting of small tasks as well. I have a question for Micah. What have you done in terms of your, say, daily routines or weekly routines or rituals that have really helped mitigate falling into downward spirals? And I'm making an assumption that you did fall into a downward spiral at some point from just what you alluded to. But I'm assuming that you've got ways of overcoming it, and love to hear something about that.
Yeah. Well, one thing I've done is try to get rid of rituals wherever possible.
Okay.
I don't want to have a dependency on, I have to have, this particular candle lit, or or I can only write in this particular spot, right? So I try to be flexible. I find, right? So I work full-time plus at a day job. I take a train and a shuttle to and from work. So I find that to be some surprisingly productive time. There's something about the motion of the vehicle and the kind of almost white noise around you. So every once in a while, I will, if I really need to get something done, I will just go on. I'll find a train and just ride back and forth for a while just to get some writing done.
Okay, so finding an environment that you know works for you.
Yeah, that's interesting that on the one hand you try to avoid ritual, but on the other hand you found this thing that is a go-to when you need it. Yeah, I like that because our brains do become trained to certain stimulus or certain environments. So, you know, if you're aware of that, you can use it as a tool. It can be very helpful when you need it, but at the same time, you don't want to build anything into a crutch because then when you don't have it handy, you know, it becomes a detriment.
Yeah.
Does anybody think there's some level of anxiety maybe, or some, you know, you've mentioned it, Micah, about, you know, we've almost never met any writers who, you know, or at least if they're overconfident, then you know they're probably going to churn out some rubbish until it seems as if it's that classic myth, isn't it? You know, Hemingway with his bottle and you know, the sort of the tortured artist. Do you think there's something that goes hand in hand? Do we need some level of inner drive, that's sort of some consternation that wants us to forge a completely fictional world? You know, is that maybe as a part of our makeup?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Nobody wants to think that the thing you just wrote, that's the best thing you'll ever write. And
Right? So
true. We're always challenging ourselves and taking on, you know, once we master a certain skill, we'll go up to the next level. And that's, you know, that's inherently stressful. Not all stress is bad.
Yes.
But when it reaches the level of anxiety, then it is usually all bad.
Well, as you said, if it's affecting your life as opposed to something that you use as drive, if it's bigger than you, or if it's bigger than me, then that's when that's when it's an issue. But if I'm bigger than it, then I can use it to my advantage. So, like Micah says, you know, if I'm feeling like I've lost a bit of something or creativity, or I need I'll just go and take a train, or I'll go and do whatever it is, something that's going to break that pattern. So I think pattern interruption is really important, and not to try and say I've got to get rid of anxiety, because at some deep level, as you say, some stress is the reason why we get out of bed in the morning. So,
and I think there's like a difference. Good stress is driving, you know, it makes you go forward, and anxiety is paralyzing and it stops you in your tracks. So
So is the writing ever anxiety or depression inducing, or does writing just suffer because of anxiety or depression that has a different source? What's the relationship between those things and being a writer?
For me, writing is therapeutic. So there's a lot of principles of like cognitive behavioral therapy, the kinds of things that if you went to a therapist, kind of things they would talk to you about, you know, reframing a situation, so in neutral terms. Because a lot of times we look at a situation and we just think, oh, it's all bad, it's terrible, right? I'll never get this novel done. It'll never sell. It'll never, right? So we can take those thoughts and reframe them in you know, true neutral terms. Like, you know, a lot of novels. Yeah, what would a neutral term for that be? So true neutral would be, I don't know what the future is gonna happen.
Yes.
I'm going to do my best. I'm going to get it out there, and we'll see what happens. Right? That's not being hopelessly optimistic, but it's not being pessimistic either.
Right.
So writing for me is a really useful tool to reframe some of these negative thoughts, especially the ones that circulate around and around. You can capture them. You can write them down, and sometimes just naming thought, just exposing it on the page is enough to take its power.
So this is like journaling type writing, not like working on your novel that helps with these issues.
Right. Yeah, if I'm totally stuck in the words, journal for a couple pages and transition into my story. That helps too.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. That's interesting that reframing things into neutral terms takes away their power And we're so used to trying to motivate and rah, go and dream big and 10x and all this kind of stuff. But, sometimes when you try to do that sort of thing as a motivation tool, it backfires because you don't believe it in the moment.
Right.
So
or it
neutralizing
turns into overwhelm.
Yeah. I like that.
That's one of the things that really helped me was the practice of yoga, and particularly physical yoga, a very physical yoga, and then realizing that attachment to anything is not necessarily terribly helpful. And so whether it's attachment to your own depression or anxiety, or attachment to the reverse, which is, as you say, the whole ambitious, I'm going to conquer the world, I'm going to write a novel a month. And I like what Micah says is just, well, do whatever you can to make it neutral. And that to me is that's kind of like that philosophy of removing attachment,
right?
Because it gets you to this too shall pass, and who knows what the future holds.
Okay, yeah. The other thing I just wanted to say is what's helped me a lot is finding a higher purpose in my life. What's the dent I want to make in the universe, and how does my writing project connect to that? So having that in mind helps me power through the tough times and get done what I need to get done.
Right. Yeah, that's wonderful. I like that, connecting what you do every day to your personal purpose. So it doesn't have to be, feed the world or cure cancer. It can just be what is my role in this universe. Excellent.
Yeah. I do have a free email course for people who want to go through some of these exercises.
Excellent.
And reducing your anxiety. It's winningatlife.xyz, one of those fancy new domains.
Winningatlife.xyz. We will link to that in the show notes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, great resource.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that, Mike. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming back on the show with us. And again, if anyone missed it, we've got a companion episode with Micah talking lit RPG. Thank you for listening to the Storyworks Roundtable. Find all our shows, show notes, and videos at storyworkspodcast.com.